Are you looking for the perfect gifts this holiday season that celebrate Detroit and Michigan? I know from personal experience that you can find something special for everyone on your list at Citybird. Unique, thoughtful, and local, Citybird has it all for anyone on your list. Imagine surprising your loved ones with their exclusive line of ceramic ornaments, beautifully designed to celebrate the things that make our area special. Or classic engraved neighborhood rocks glasses with your choice of 60 Detroit neighborhoods for a touch of elegance. Citybird also offers a curated selection of jewelry, candles, home goods, and apparel by hundreds of local and independent makers. You can find that perfect gift for that special someone. And let me tell you, I know from personal experience, do not forget the card. And here, the cards are truly special. Visit Citybird today and make this holiday season truly memorable, not just by buying gifts, but enjoying the city while you do it. Located in Detroit at 460 West Canfield, between Cass and 2nd Avenues in Midtown, or online at citybird-detroit.com. That's citybird-detroit.com. Hello, friends. Happy holidays, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for Thursday, December 21st, 2023. I am Jer Stays, and Norris Howard. We are not going to be saying 2023 much longer.
No, man, we are approaching the new year very quickly, and it's an exciting time, man. New Year's is always really cool. One of my favorite holidays and a new and fresh beginning for everyone. So, yeah, it's exciting. I wish there was more snow, though.
Oh, same.
This kind of sucks.
In this climate, part of it is the whole white Christmas thing, and I don't think that's happening in any way, shape, or form. I think later this week it's going to be like 50 degrees.
Yeah, I know. That sucks to me. That's crap. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, if I wanted to just have a 50-degree Christmas, I go live in Tennessee somewhere. Christmas is supposed to be freezing, snot-drippingly cold.
A little bit of suffering with your cheer.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned you're a New Year's guy. Are you into resolutions?
No.
Same.
I think that is setting yourself up for failure, to be honest.
I'm into goals, but not resolutions. Like, I'm big on the reset, and I'll be sending an email to the team and also to our Patreon members about last year and next year and goals and that. But I'm not a resolutions person because I feel like if you really resolve to do it, you should resolve to do it at any time during the year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a person that believes very heavily in just plan to do things throughout the year, but I also understand New Year's is it's just easy to kind of use that as a marker to start something new. So there's nothing wrong with that.
100%.
So Jared, where you been lately around town? I know you've been getting into a lot of stuff.
So just the other night, and it's a short engagement, only running till the 23rd. And this was a special thing that I saw that is not going to be at the other shows, but this was something special I wanted to mention to you. I saw in the flesh none other than Dr. Otis Williams.
Like the Temptation Otis?
Yeah.
That's, I didn't know he was still around. I'm going to be honest.
He looked good. In defense, he looked really good up there. I went to see Ain't Too Proud to Beg at the Fisher Theater. Great storytelling show. Like, really great cast. If you like Motown, if you're into that story, if you're looking for something to do, because it's only a few days. So you got to move on it. But if you're looking for something to do, something very like Detroit-centric, and look, the story's going to tug on your heartstrings a little bit. It's not all positive. It's actually a really good story talking about their development and what they went through. And of course, if you're into the Motown sound, it made me realize one of the things I wish I could have done was to see the old Motortown Revue in person. Because there's something special. Like, we see all the music videos and whatever. I grew up with the MTV generation before it went to all reality shows. I love my music videos.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine what it was like to go in there and see, David Ruffin or Otis or any of these folks, the Supremes, in person. Like, the electricity of that must have been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not a play musical guy myself, but you're about the third person I've heard talk about this show. So clearly it must be pretty decent.
And you know what else I want to speak into truth right here? I want to speak into the world. I would love to have Otis on the show. I feel like that man, regardless if you're into like musicals or whatever, I feel like that man has a ton of stories, and I want to get them. He's in his 80s. He sounded great. Like, he didn't sing, but he sounded like awesome. It was so good to see him. I want to get him into the studio at Tech Town. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be really dope. I really think that would be super cool. And, just to talk to somebody who can have that sort of history in the context for the history, not just of the city, but just of the city's sort of artistic history is really, really interesting. I would love to hear it from them 1,000%.
It's interesting, too, that all of their stories, even in the musical, they would reference streets in Detroit like Euclid and others where you realize all these people, and there's got to be a map somewhere. And if there isn't, we got to do it. But a map of where all of these stars were born. There's one just a few blocks away in the North End. I didn't realize that was David Ruffin's birthplace. I just didn't think about it, and I should think about it. And we should really honor that history a lot more. That's part of why I'm excited about that Motown expansion, and doing it now, I think, is the right time so that these artists, Smokey, others can experience that,
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that there's kind of like no star maps or whatever of like former Motown, homes and stuff. Like I've seen stuff similar, but I haven't necessarily seen it like formalized. It's always like some dude with a van with like a really bad like decal on like a Chrysler Town and Country. But like, I think there's some opportunity there.
Well, and if you do a tour or if there's something you work with, reach out, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Always interested in this stuff. And I know that our audience is too. Now, Norris, I know that you're going somewhere because you've been kind of quiet this week, but I know, just so we can tell listeners, you're going somewhere.
Yeah, man. I'll be out of town for a few, going out to the west side of the state to hang out with my partner's family. And then I'm off to the islands, man, for New Year's cruise, man. It's going to be a great time. I'm trying to start the year with some sunshine on my skin, vitamin D, and some relaxation. And coming back to the new year refreshed. I think we've both worked really hard this year. So that's where I'm going to be. So for the last show of the year, unfortunately, I won't be here. And that is sad. I would love to be here for the end of the year show, but I gotta break out.
Yeah, and we're gonna be doing a reduced schedule next week. We'll do a couple of shows, but we're gonna do a reduced schedule just because we all need a break around here and then hit it really hard starting January 1st. I've already recorded some interviews I think people will like, and I'll mention a couple of them in the future when we get to the rest of the rundown. And let's jump into those stories, Norris.
Let's do it, man.
All right. A report out of Canada from the outlet CP24 says that transit cars from Toronto may be coming to Detroit, specifically the People Mover. They had a line called the Scarborough RT in Toronto that had been recently decommissioned. The Detroit Transportation Company's board of directors authorized the purchase of surplus stuff. They're looking to buy like 10 to 12 cars, some signaling infrastructure. As we all know, the People Mover has been around for a long time. It has not been upgraded in a long time. It's been maintained, but not upgraded. There is a $100 million bill that was last reported that's staring in the face for modernization for the People Mover. This could kick that down the road a little bit because these cars were recently refurbished. And that's one thing about rail transit that I think people don't realize is that those rail cars, if you go to like the New York Transit Museum or something, those rail cars can last forever if they're maintained.
Yeah, they really can. I mean, I even think of a place like Boston, which has been using the same rail cars for what feels like the industrial era. But again, I think this is one of those sort of net positive things. It's going to cost a lot of money to modernize the People Mover. And I mean a lot, like you said, $100 million. And the thing about it to me is that I'm not even necessarily sure if that is value for money. If they were to try to fully upgrade the People Mover, I'm not sure if that's worth it. It's barely 3 miles or not even 3 miles of length of area that it covers. And to be perfectly honest, unless there was some sort of plan to attach it to whatever expansion of, let's say, the Q line or whatever streetcar system that potentially could go in and around the city of Detroit, I don't think that spending that money is really necessary. I think this is smart to do. Like, let's just upgrade the cars. Let's just make sure that those are running. Let's do, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but let's keep it running enough until we figure out either how to expand this thing or to just keep it running like that forever.
Yeah, they're going to be spending something like $1 million. And that's mostly in shipping and costs around that, because this is actually helping the Toronto Transit Corporation kind of get rid of some of this stuff and put it back to good use. So I think that's a good story. I don't think people should be as worried about, oh, well, it's not new cars. Well, again, if you've been in a city with rail, those cars last a long time. Now, it was announced recently, and this ties into the story about it being a connector. It was announced that there's going to be this free fare pilot starting January 2nd on the People Mover. And you mentioned about it connecting. When I posted about this on Instagram, I think a lot of people didn't know the history, that the People Mover was supposed to be that center loop that connected a subway elevated streetcar system that was proposed in the 70s and never came to fruition. Like a big deal. Like politicians were all over this. This was a real thing. There was federal money lined up, but the city and the suburbs could not get it together. So the only thing that got built was the People Mover.
Yeah, and it is really sad that it kind of never got all the way built out. But with the Q line being taken over by the RTA, I think there is some possibilities for something positive here. Now, I don't necessarily know or think, I'm not a city planner or a civil engineer, so I don't really know how you're able to do it. But the thing for me is if RTAs are able to figure out a way to get the People Mover connected to that Q line streetcar system without having people, like walk outside and freeze, it would be a really positive thing. And I think if you can even just expand to the spoke roads, as I say all the time, and connect it to the People Mover, that's pretty good. If we're able to accomplish something like that within the next decade, that's pretty good. I don't think that that's a negative thing. I hope we can get that far, but it's just, as it stands right now, the People Mover is just such an old, archaic system, and the money that you would have to spend to modernize it and connect it to something like the Q line or whatever sort of plan would come after it, it would be a lot of money, a lot.
And what you're referencing to is the news that the RTA, as planned, may take over operations of the Q line from the nonprofit M1 Rail. This would open up a bunch of money and resources and ability to apply for grants, like a bunch of things. This is something that was expected to happen. And some critics may say, well, the Q line costs money. Well, that earmark or tag for those dollars is going to go with it. So it's not like it's going to saddle the RTA with additional stuff, because the Q line now is revenue neutral. The other thing is that it has nearly 1 million riders in 2023 since it flipped to free. And I think the People Mover is seeing that and saying, hey, if we can get some sponsors or something like that, because you know what? I use the People Mover a lot less than I would because it doesn't take credit cards. I hate like carrying quarters around with me or, having $1 in my pocket to exchange for a bunch of tokens. And that system's all antiquated. So in some ways, making it free, I think, will increase its reach and usage.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, for me, the ability, to park in, some structure and take the People Mover around downtown is cool. But I'd rather just walk. Like, as somebody who lived downtown, there were areas where I could have took the People Mover to the other side of downtown. Man, I'd rather just save the $1.50 and take the extra 10 minutes and walk. But I think when it comes to the Q line, it connects way too many areas that actually require people to move to and fro that Woodward corridor, right? So you're talking about if somebody is staying in a hotel, let's say you're staying in that Aloft hotel right there on Woodward and Grand Circus, right? Okay, you take the Q line up to the DIA or beyond if you're trying to go to a nice dinner up there at a chartreuse. Or let's say you're a Wayne State student and you want to go downtown to go to one of the bars or to do some shopping. That's dope. That's the kind of stuff that we don't really think about as folks from the neighborhoods or people maybe from outside the city, is that think about all the kids who live at Wayne State who have to like go to H&M or want to go to Avalon or whatever. Like, they don't have to drive. That's really, really positive for the city. And so if you're able to build on that, that's a great thing. But the ridership for the Q line being free, I'm not shocked by that, because I actually think the cost was one of the few barriers to getting people to adopt it. And now I think if you could show people will use it, I think if you expand on it, you may be able to justify charging for it eventually. It doesn't go enough places in the city to me to justify it.
Well, we will be watching this story in the new year. I'm looking to get some conversations on that going. Real quick, Bird, the scooter company, declared bankruptcy. They're going to continue operations in the cities they're operating in, but they're going to be doing a sale behind the scenes. They went public with a SPAC like in 2021. And I mention this because, man, that scooter craze has been a thing. And I know that they're all over, and there's ordinances to make sure that scooters are placed in neighborhoods, and there's just a lot of conversation around the scooter whole thing. And I wanted your quick reaction on maybe a little bit of the bankruptcy, but mostly like the scooter energy in Detroit.
I was living downtown when the scooter craze hit. And, it was pretty okay. It was cool. It was a great novelty. And I think actually it really benefited teenagers. It benefited those who maybe don't have enough money to buy a whole car, but still want to be able to kind of, get around town, get around downtown for a little bit and not have to worry about some of the other car-centric stuff. Ultimately, it was too much. It was way too much. It was too many scooters and not enough people who cared about using them. Because even then, I don't think I've seen anybody on a Bird scooter that was older than 40, right? I wasn't seeing no boomers on the Bird scooters because a fall on one of these scooters, that could be it. It could be game 7 if you fall off one of those scooters, even for a young person. So definitely older people weren't using it. And if you don't have all demographics using your product, you're going to have an issue. But I do think a major issue was just oversaturation, man. The moment that these hit the market, they probably only had a 3 to 4 year window before other companies start saying, why don't I just sell these for people to have? Which even Bird themselves started doing. But so many other companies started selling the scooters for you to own. So a lot of people who were pro scooter now have their own. They don't need to, rent one from Bird. And the e-bike thing has hit.
Yeah. I want to talk about that because I know a lot of people who maybe use a scooter once in a while. They ended up finding e-bikes and they got one and they love it because in a lot of situations where we're at, a bike or an e-bike is far more practical. And then I'll also note that Mogo has continued to grow and be a big thing. The bike share service, it's almost like Bird and scooters. Not all, I'm sure there's still going to be some scooters out there, right? Like I'm very wary, especially as a podcaster with like such and such is dead. Rarely is it dead. It usually changes in some way, right? Because there's like a local company that does some cool stuff, but their form factor is more bike-like. The scooter craze kind of brought in something where you did see a change in mobility, but I really want to talk to Mogo in the new year because they're doing some interesting things, not just in the city, but expanding into the suburbs. And people are like, oh, I can use something else. But it feels like to me that we're landing more on the bike and the e-bike than the scooter, because I know also a lot of people who took some wicked falls off of those scooters.
Yeah, well, and the main thing, first of all, almost everybody knows how to ride a bike. Like that's the thing.
More
like
people know how to ride a bike than know how to drive a car. That's a statistic I learned this week.
Yeah, so riding a bike, you kind of understand what's going on with that. But I think also the thing with Mogo, and I've seen this implemented in other cities as well, is there's a station for them. You go to the Mogo station and there will be a bike there. Mm-hmm. And they can only be returned to those stations. So even if you wanted to use a scooter, there would be a lot of times where there was none around within walking distance. So you say, well, this is dumb. I might as well just drive.
Or like there's like a lonely scooter sitting in the middle of John R. that like dragged to the sidewalk. Somebody literally just like left it in the middle of the street.
Yeah. And it's just like, man, I'm not using that one. That's like a bait scooter. I don't want to touch that one. So, you have all that. But, in my travels this year, definitely I have seen e-bikes completely overtake the scooters. The e-bike situation is way, way, way more, as you said, practical. But when you think about it, especially places that have, rough terrain or hills or it snows, like a bike is just going to be better. It's just going to be a better option. And e-bikes are cool. I even see them, out here in the suburbs sometimes. So, I just think that's the thing that's really kind of pushed Bird out the box is e-bikes and a little bit of oversaturation.
Norris, have you heard of the holiday of Festivus?
Indeed, I have. I am in my 30s and I have definitely watched Seinfeld.
All right. So Festivus is for the rest of us. And a big thing about Festivus
is the airing of grievances.
Yes. And that is exactly what we're going to do. Because I have some listeners with some grievances. They have some things to tell us about. I will say, and I was surprised at this, they don't have grievances at us. I was really looking forward to somebody being like, you know what, your glasses are stupid, or something like,
that sucks. Because listen, man, I got grievances for everybody. I got smoke for everyone. But if nobody's coming at us, I won't come at them. But come on, y'all, that was weak.
All right, let's hop into it. The first one I want to mention, this is from a few people. I've coalesced a few of these because there were some themes this year with the grievances. A few people are frustrated at no movement on District Detroit. And generally, they're not counting the U of M Center of Innovation. I went to the groundbreaking actually last week. That was a big event with a marching band and everything. They're not counting it because if not for Stephen Ross and U of M, in their opinion, it would not have happened. And there's a lot of frustration that they picked a piece of land that they don't own, which may be for political reasons or whatever. But yeah, people are mad because it's all this drama, all this community benefits, everything else. And here we are sitting again.
Yeah, and I completely agree with everyone there. And listen, again, it's somebody who's often travels, especially within the States. Even smaller cities have done a lot over the past 20 to 25 years to increase density in their downtown cores. You see it in Cleveland, you see it in Columbus, which, Jared, you and I have talked about in the past off air, just like the rise of Columbus as a really great mid-sized city, which I hate praising Ohio. But, Minneapolis and many other places, especially in the Midwest like that have done so much to really boost their downtown cores. And it just feels like, the District Detroit is just another one of those projects that it's like if the city is not fitting footing the bill, that it won't happen. And that just really rubs me the wrong way, especially when you see so much progress happening at the Hudson site, right? And don't get me wrong, as I say, the billionaire fiefdom and all the rest of that stuff. But at least I see movement. At least I see something happening there. I may not be the biggest fan, but Dan has put his money where his mouth is, and he has put the stuff there. And he's done it in a timely fashion.
Can I share something that Stephen Ross said at that event?
Sure.
Because obviously Stephen Ross does not care what anybody thinks. This guy owns the Miami Dolphins. Go Google it. He doesn't care. He said that this was the longest development project he's ever worked on in his career.
Ridiculous.
And he was visibly frustrated at the podium. It was almost kind of weird seeing Chris and Stephen together because obviously they're working together and moving this thing forward. But he was frustrated to all get out, and he had no problem sharing directly that this should not have taken so long.
And I think he should keep that energy because if you look at a city like Detroit in the metro area and just the opportunity that there is here in terms of a place like the Ross Center, and don't get me wrong, I think this will still hit its roadblocks, but there's enormous opportunity. And yeah, if I'm an investor, I'd be frustrated, incredibly frustrated. And the District of Detroit has the ability to really be, I don't want to say the final phase, but it would really help fill in some of those massive gaps that we have left in sort of that, south of 75 spaces. And, I think about those two ridiculous parking lots across the street from the Fox and the Fillmore. And I just go, what a dumb use of land. Like, what a stupid use of land on the main thoroughfare, the most important street in the city, and you got two surface parking lots. It's so ridiculous.
And you've got the county and the Illiches disagreeing because apparently the county stadium authority owns those parking lots. So you've got them and the Illiches disagreeing over what to do with this thing because the county still wants the revenue from the parking lots, and they're not even inclined to do a deal. It's a mess.
Yeah, and it's a mess. It further frustrates me because you can't tell me that the revenue from those parking lots will all of a sudden be more valuable than the revenue that they would get in taxes from people who would live in buildings or businesses that would run out of those buildings. See, this is the stuff I'm talking about, the red tape, the bureaucracy, the foolishness when it comes to development in the city of Detroit. And everybody is at fault except for the citizens. Everybody but the citizens is at fault here.
All right, real quick, Omar, very simple, speeding drivers.
Hey, man, listen, I get it, but you know what I'm saying? We on the lodge with it.
Oh, I just don't want any drag racers down my street. That's what I'd like to stop.
I feel you. And I think doing stuff like that in residential areas is ridiculous and dangerous and foolish. But I'm going to say this statistically, Michigan and Metro Detroit has some of the safest drivers in the entire country.
All right. Max, this is a very niche one. Zone Detroit was supposed to have a draft zoning code in spring of 2023. Now, if listeners don't know, and their website still shows a delivery date of spring 2023, this was a plan to modernize the zoning ordinances in Detroit. If you're a longtime listener, you know I had a conversation with Brian Malloy, who built a new building and redeveloped the building over there on Trumbull where Folk is and a bunch of other things. If you go down Trumbull and you see the really cool restored Verner's advertisement, that's his building. And the building next to it that he built, the city had no idea. It cost so much money because the city had no frameworks. The ordinances were not set up to build areas of Detroit like a city because of things like parking minimums and things like that that are based on like a 70s, 80s kind of like a suburban. Remember back in the day, it was like, we're going to make Detroit just like Troy. And that worked so well. Right? Because look, if you want Troy, you're just going to move to Troy, man. Like, I'm just telling you. And I'm not saying that to knock Troy. Like, there's benefits to it, but
different towns, man.
Different towns, different vibes, right? This was supposed to modernize those ordinances, do some things. There are no updates. That's something we'll follow up with in the new year because, that's a pretty niche one, but I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it too. And it's very interesting because I was reading a lot about Tokyo because for me, at least in my conceptualization, I see a city like Tokyo and I go, this is how I wish every city functioned. And that goes for, London, Paris, New York. I just look at Tokyo and I go, this is the example of how a city is supposed to work. And the main reason why it functions so well is because the entire city is zone mixed use. All of it, the whole thing. There's only one true large industrial park area, but everything else, your school is right next to some stores, which is right next to residential, which is right next to, maybe some light industrial, like a small ice factory or something like that. But you can do everything in your neighborhood. Everything. It's in walking distance. And I think as we begin to conceptualize what our city should look like in the future, and this is beyond just Detroit, this is also for everywhere in America, is we got to rethink that because, the sprawl that we saw in the 50s and 60s and in early 70s, I'm not necessarily sure if people want to keep living like that. The builders are going to keep building and people are going to try their best to keep buying houses. But if we get to a point where that becomes untenable, which I think it will eventually, we got to rethink how we rebuild cities. And I think the concept of mixed zoning within your city limits is something that we should really think about. Now, I know there's a lot of NIMBYism in America. I think we really need to rethink it because we're not building our cities efficiently in America right now.
Now, if you've got any last-minute holiday shopping to do, make sure to stop by our friends at City Bird Detroit.
Absolutely. I picked up a couple gifts from there myself.
Excellent. Norris Howard, so good to talk to you. Happy holidays, happy Cruise-a-days, happy Kalamazoo-a-days. It's always good to talk with you, and I look forward to catching up in the new year.
Absolutely. And Merry Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Festivus and New Year's to everybody out there in Metro Detroit and beyond. I've been really happy to be able to join this team this year and share some of my thoughts and opinions. And I've been actually really happy to even hear about the people who disagree with me because you know what? That excites me that people are engaged and want to do what they can to try to make Detroit and Michigan a better place to live and grow. So Happy New Year to everyone, and I will see you all in 2024.
Well, with that, I am Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Remember to drop 5 stars on your favorite podcast app. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.